Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I want to talk about communication, thoughtful and intentional communication. So we'll explore what I feel like was a pretty powerful way of improving my communication, and what the reason why this came about was this morning, of course, in my meeting. That's how all my topics come about. Not all of them, but the quote came up that was credited to a 13th century poet, Rumi. And Rumi was a Persian poet, so most of his writings are in Farsi. And what he said was, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. At the first gate, ask yourself, is it true? At the second, ask, is it necessary? And at the third gate, ask, is it kind? And I just really love this. It's really a longer way of saying pause. Pause before you talk, like think before you speak. That's what we say these days. I like to say pause because I think we need a bit more time than just thinking before we speak. I feel like we need to actually take some time to work through some of these questions before we respond to somebody. There are similar quotes that some say this quote about the true, necessary, and kind started with Socrates, and even another poet, Mary Ann, no idea how to pronounce her last name, Pietzker. I don't know. Sorry if I just destroyed that. But she mentions this 3 gates in her 1872 book of miscellaneous poems. Anyway, there is so much power in intentional communication. And I'm not talking about being manipulative, but instead manipulating our communication to be more effective. It's so easy to talk that so many folks just talk without thinking very much. I mean, we can always retract what we say, right? Not really. We can't make people unhear something that we've said. We can apologize. We can make our amends, like I learned in my sobriety program. But what I've learned over time after working the steps in my sobriety program is to do this pause, to be more thoughtful. The way that it was introduced to me was the making amends in steps 8 and 9. And I don't want to have to make those amends later. I don't want to have to keep making amends because I have to do a daily inventory, which is what step 10 tells me. I have to do a daily inventory and think about my conversation throughout the day and my interactions with people. Did I, was I unintentionally hurtful? Did I say something that could have been construed in a different way? That is an exercise that I like to go through every night, because many times it has, not many times, a few times. It has led me to contacting somebody before I go to bed and saying, I hope this came across as I intended. This is what I intended. That's all that I have to say. And in these times, I think there was two of them where somebody responded back and said, thank you so much for reaching out to me to share that with me, because I actually did misinterpret it. So I was able to resolve, strengthen really a relationship just by doing that. So that worked. And if I commit to the steps of the program, I have to do that every day. I have to make things right if I have wronged someone. And why add that stress into my life? If I take more time at the front end of my conversations, I can spare the energy on the back end of the conversation thinking, oh, I should have said this or I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I said this word and it was offensive or something like that. Like, if I take time to think about it before I talk, um, I can avoid having that added stress in my life. And honestly, there is not really a time limit. I feel like, especially these days when we have this texting, like for example, right now, there's a text coming through from my brother and my mom. They're talking to each other. My mom is at my nephew's graduation. I don't know what the text says, but I see it coming through. And when I see a text coming through, like, I have to check it. You know, I want to read it and I want to respond as soon as possible. And just because of my vision issues that I've had because of my vestibular migraines and whatever else I've got, I've learned how to be more patient and understand that I don't have to respond right away. I don't even have to read the text right away. I can treat them like emails. And which honestly, if I was working, I have the same problem with emails. It's like I have to check it and respond right away. My boss actually taught me that it's not necessary to respond right away to emails. And quite honestly, if you spend a little more time thinking about your response, you can communicate a lot more thoughtfully to whomever it is that was sending you an email. So communication shapes our world, and I was obsessed with it at work so much that I wrote a corporate communication strategy for work and I presented it to the executives. It's the foundation of everything that we do, communication. It's the foundation of a business. It's the bridge between our hearts and our minds. And in recovery, at work, with our families, the stakes can be really high, and the need for clarity and kindness becomes even more pressing when we're under stress in some of these situations. How often do we stop and consider the impact of what we're saying, the impact on other people's lives? So today I'm talking about this strategy that began with this idea that was raised this morning about thinking through before I talk, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So I'm going to break these down slightly. And then I want to talk a little more about this kindness thing. And I want to tell you about this little social experiment I did a couple years ago. I guess it's been, yeah, a couple years ago, but it really changed the way that I communicate. And I would say it was born from conversations I had with my boss, my famous boss that I talk about all the time. And I decided that let me just see if he's right. And he was right. I probably took it a little further than he was expecting me to, but I'm an overachiever. So first, asking if something is true encourages us to speak with honesty and integrity. And then reflecting on whether it's necessary helps avoid oversharing or stirring conflict unnecessarily. And it makes me laugh when I hear oversharing because I know so many people that I think overshare. And I bet there are people that I worked with that would say I was an oversharer. But I don't know, I had a lot to say, but I found that this is important to my way that I was communicating at work. I found that if I started, so if I had something to say and it was necessary, fine. If I got to the point where I was uncomfortable, I would keep talking even when it's not necessary. So I didn't know when to stop, when the necessary ran out, and I just kept talking. And what I found that when I did that, let's say I walked into the president's office. So this happened all the time. It's the president or the owner's office, the highest executives. I would go in there and I would have something that was true and necessary and kind to say. But since I was intimidated, I was feeling intimidated, I would say a little more than what was necessary. And as soon as I cross that line to what is not necessary, I start feeling anxiety building. I start almost talking myself into a corner. I start getting to the point where I don't have a point to what I'm saying. And so over time, I learned how to stop doing that. But it took a couple years for me to recognize that I was doing it, and then a couple more years to practice not doing it. So, for what it's worth, I was definitely an oversharer, and I still do it sometimes, but I am a little more aware that I do it. And then finally, considering if it's kind, if what we're saying is kind, that stresses the power of our words and how they can affect other people. They can heal other people and they can hurt other people. And we can hurt someone a little bit over and over and over again with little things that we say. Or we can say one thing and just completely knock people entirely off of their feet with one sentence. And it's important to be cognizant of that. Maybe what I'm saying right now is not unkind, but do I have some sort of intention that is negative? Because that intention will come through in what I'm saying. And if I continue to have that intention over time, I will continue to hurt that other person more and more or damage the relationship more and more. I can think about people that I worked with that I didn't care for. And I had a hard time hiding that. I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. And it comes across. I really had to work hard at making sure that I was coming across as kind as I could, as kind as I would be to somebody that I did like. And sometimes that just requires the God box and a little bit of prayer. For those of you who are lifetime listeners, you're fully aware that my God box has some sort of magic in it. And if there was somebody at work that I was extremely frustrated with and I kept trying to let it go, I would write down that person's name and put them in the God box and shut the box. And over time, if I was repeatedly frustrated with this person, I would repeatedly write their name down on a sticky and put it inside the box. And this was like this physical representation of letting go of that frustration or stress. Well, every single person I put in that God box, except for my boss, was eventually let go from the company. I had nothing to do with it, I swear. It just happened. And to me, what that represented is life is going to happen without me getting involved. And it was the best thing I could do is keep my frustrations to myself, between me and my higher power. Stick it in my God box. Life was going to happen on its own. So it's worth sharing that over and over again because it's pretty amazing. Okay. So here's my social experiment that I did. So my boss used to tell me that, I don't know what words he used, but just to be brief, that I came across as a bitch sometimes. Okay. He didn't say that in those exact words, but that's what he meant. So he suggested that maybe he would help me think things through. And he would actually, after I would write an email, he would review it and like point things out to me that came across abrasively. And typically they came across abrasively because I intended them to, because I was irritated. And so he was mentoring me on how to approach my relationships in a way that does not come across abrasive, because really, I'm going to need those people and my relationship to stay intact because we have a professional relationship. So I needed to treat them professionally and put my emotions to the side. So over time, I practiced this. Oh, and it was just, it drove me crazy to not be able to express how much I was pissed off at somebody. But I did it. And over time, alongside my sobriety program, I learned, and my talking to my sponsor, I learned how to refrain. I learned how to not get involved, use my God box. And that's why him and I have this joke about my God box. He's just like, just put it in the God box. Life will take care of itself, you know? And so anyway, I learned how to be more kind, even though I didn't want to. Well, over time, I started thinking, maybe I need to kick it up a notch. Maybe I need to take it to the next level. Maybe I should try being kinder than what feels natural to me. So that's what I did. Like, my boss taught me to not come across abrasively. So I was like shooting for neutral. That's what I was shooting for. Well, now I want to shoot for kind. I want it to feel awkward. That's how kind I'm going to be. And so this is what I did. So it was super awkward, especially when I was stressed or irritated or feeling unenthusiastic. Um, I would have people like come into my office, for example, and say, "Hey, do you have a minute? I have a question for you." And I would say, it's like I have to put on my personality. And I'm like, "Yes, absolutely. I have as much time as you want. How can I help you?" That's what I would say. What is natural for me is to say, "Yes, that's it." Yes. Like I'm thinking, hurry up, get it done because I got to get back to work. And instead, I was like, absolutely. I would put my hands down. I would look up from my computer and say, I have all the time in the world. How can I help you? So it didn't feel right, but I will tell you from the very first day that I started doing that, people responded differently to me. People smiled more. People were more open to sharing just a little bit more personal information. I'm not talking about they're telling me about their private life. They're telling me a little more about how they feel and um, being more human with me. So, how do we shift this natural response of yes to being more compassionate, but also we have to be authentically compassionate. So one effective method is to pause, just pause. So I would initially want to blurt out yes, meaning, yes, tell me whatever it is you have to say. I have stuff to do, places to go, people to see. Um, Instead, somebody would come in and I would not open my mouth and I would look at them, realize, okay, what do I want to say? Yes, I have all the time in the world for you. How can I help you? I had to pause in order to do that because it wasn't natural. And that little mini break gives a moment to reflect on my words and managing my emotions. So I'm actually during that pause, not only am I finding the words that I want to say to the person, but I'm also feeling that bubbling up of stress because you're taking me away from what I need to do and I'm settling it because everything is okay. Everything's always okay. Things aren't gonna be okay. Things are okay. So I'm just one person. I can only do one thing at a time, and this person needs me. If I truly do not have the ability to stop and help somebody, then I need to take further action. I need to shut my office door. I need to put a sign up. Or here's the thing, I can say, I would absolutely love to help you, and I'm so sorry. I have a deadline. Can this wait and I can get back to you later? Like, that is not natural for me. What would be natural for me is to say, I really have to get this done. Can you talk to such and such or something like that? It just comes across a little more like, no, I'm not available. So just changing up those words ever so slightly, but still I have to pause before I say it. Pausing allows me to respond rather than react. And what seems like a really long silence to me is not actually a really long silence. This pause works so many times at work. It works in meetings when it gets quiet. Say I'm presenting and I take a pause. I even do it on this podcast a little bit. Not so much. I need to learn how to pause a little more on the podcast because I just keep running my mouth for the entire time. But if you're in a meeting, you're presenting or something, it is so effective to pause. And I had an executive say, when you pause, it appears as though you're being a lot more thoughtful about what you're going to say next. So during this pause, another strategy is to think about how could this person be hearing my words differently than I intended? And this can greatly change the way that we communicate. It seems like overkill, but this has helped me to choose different words for things and explain things sometimes in more detail than I originally thought was needed. And it actually shows the listener that I have time for them, you know? I'm not rushing. The longer that I pause in a conversation, the more that that person who I'm talking to feels that I have extended time for them. And there is a way, some of you may be thinking, but I don't have extended time for them. There is a way to do it, even when you don't have time. I mean, you still have to be honest about, I don't have a lot of time right now. So for me, what all of this did is that it helped me to calm down. It helped me to stop rushing. And when I stopped rushing, people around me seemed to lower their stress level as well. And things just seemed more productive. Like everything just changed when I started doing this. I'm not, it's fascinating to me that I just did this little experiment and it was so helpful to me. So another few things that you can do is express some gratitude. So this significantly increases feelings of kindness and empathy. So what I started doing was if somebody would come talk to me and ask me a question or something like that, I would start off by thanking them for something before I respond. And this also allowed me to pause a little longer. And I I tried to make that a habit to thank them for something, even if it's not something that happened today. Like, thank you for thinking about. One thing that was really effective for me is thanks for including me in what you're doing, and then answer the question. Or let me think about the answer. Let me put some thought into that. All of that stuff. It's just slowing down, really. It seems like slowing down was the key that allowed all of this to happen. Another thing is performing random acts of kindness. So this happened. We did random acts of kindness last month, I believe, was our listener challenge. So this includes things like getting somebody a cup of coffee. I mean, how would that come across? If somebody was like on a phone call and you were like, hey, do you want a refill? What would they say? I don't think anybody's ever done that at my job when I was there. But that would be a pretty cool thing to try, is to just go into somebody's cubicle and be like, hey, do you need a refill? I'm going to get a cup of coffee. That would be pretty cool. Um, and then outside of work, complimenting a stranger or helping out a neighbor. I've been doing a lot of these things recently, and they've been growing over time. The more I do it, the more I want to do it. And it started out feeling really awkward still. Like I think it was like 2 years ago, I was walking to the pool in my neighborhood, and I passed by this lady who had a really pretty garden. And I was walking by and I passed her. I may have talked about this in one of the episodes. And I was like, I'm going to tell her I love her garden. So I backed up, and she hadn't looked up at me yet. And when I backed up, she could kind of tell that there was somebody standing beside her, and she probably was like, what is happening? I'm going to get killed. And I said, hi, I just wanted to tell you that I really enjoy walking by your garden. It's beautiful. And she was so happy that I said that to her. And the feeling that it gave me, and the expression I saw on her face, made me want to do it to somebody else. And so I've complimented several gardens in the neighborhood, and it always is so well received and makes me feel good too. Helping out a neighbor. I have a couple that lives next to me, and I love to do things for them. Sometimes I'll bring them something that I've baked, or I'll just, while I'm blowing leaves out front of my house, I'll blow their leaves and that kind of thing. It's just it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I have purpose and I'm helpful. Another thing is practice active listening. We can communicate better by listening better. Don't do anything else while you're listening. This drives me crazy. And if you do it, you know who you are. Stop it. When somebody comes to talk to you, don't get on your phone. Don't get on your computer. Like, act like it's the 80s and just look at the person who is talking to you. It drives me freaking crazy. So, see if the effect of these methods increase your kindness. You know, see if it has an effect on your relationship. So, do this. Spend a week just observing and noting your own typical interactions and behaviors with others. Like, you have to start with that. You have to actually think about your emails and your texts and your verbal communication. Think about, how am I coming across? Is there a different way that what I'm saying could be interpreted? And how is my relationship with this person? Pay attention to how people respond to your usual manner. Okay, do that for a week, at least a week. Then the following week, intentionally implement these kindness strategies. This might involve setting some kindness goals. I'm going to do this when somebody walks into my office today, something like that. Practice active listening, putting down things. Like, if you're normally a texter while somebody's talking to you, put the phone down. And express gratitude. Be nicer than you want to be. Be nicer than you're comfortable being. and it will start feeling comfortable over time. It's like getting a new pair of shoes and you have to wear them in. Note any changes after the week or throughout the week. Note any changes in your interactions and people's responses to you and your own feelings about the interactions. And be sure to note both the positive and the negative. Like, say, well, whenever anybody walked into my office, I said, "Hey, thanks for coming and talking to me. Sure, I'd be happy to answer your questions," or something like that. I said this and it felt terribly awkward. Or I said this and the person responded with, "What the hell's wrong with you today?" or something like that, you know? And don't be afraid to like ask for direct feedback from the people that you're interacting with, from your family, your friends, or your colleagues about any changes that they've noticed in your behavior. This can provide external insights into the impacts of your kindness efforts and how it came across to others. I did talk to at least one of my friends slash colleagues and said, "This is what I'm doing." It's somebody who we were mentoring each other, kind of like if I had some kind of strategy that helped me be a better people leader or better at whatever I'm doing at work, I would share it with her and vice versa. Like we were learning how to be better people together. So I did talk to her about that I was just trying to be more kind than felt natural. And over time, consider how these changes in your behavior affect your relationships and your personal well-being. Decide what practices that you want to keep doing or modify as needed. And to help embed this new type of communication in your daily routine, you can start small. Start with just one conversation each day and apply is what I'm about to say, is it true? Is it necessary? Don't ever share. And put it through your kindness filter, your overly kindness filter. And although it may feel overly kind inside of you, by the time it reaches the other person, I bet it does not feel overly kind. I bet it sounds kind, just plain old kind. And reflect on the outcome and gradually increase the frequency as you become more comfortable being this super nice version of you. The goal really is to become more mindful and intentional with our words. So, as I wrap up today, I want to encourage you to think about the last few conversations you had. Could these have benefited from this approach, this overly kind approach? How might have, how might how might have, how might it have, I don't know, changed the outcome of your conversation? Do you think that you may have been able to make the other person feel a little lighter after or during the conversation by being more kind, by being more intentional, by being more mindful about what's coming out of your mouth? How about you? Were you able to, or do you think you would be able to make yourself feel a little lighter? Don't take life so seriously. Yes, I understand life is serious. Sometimes work is serious. I'm not saying take the seriousness out. I'm saying take the stress out a little bit. Like just fluff it up like rice. It doesn't have to be heavy. Fluff it up and let it come out of your mouth a little lighter. So if you found this episode helpful, good for you. Give it a try. And then also please consider sharing it with someone who also might get some benefit from being a little more kind in their conversations. But don't share it so that in a way that you offend them. Hey, you're an ass. Maybe you should hear this episode. No. So think about who might find some inspiration in it. Thank you so much for joining me on the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow.